more quality Jin. I am very pleased at his display so far, and I'm very pleased at seeing more of what I would consider my favorite character currently in Eden. In both design and, well, I would say potential. I can't really count his backstory because we don't have as much. But relatively, when it comes to just him existing and what we know so far, I would say he's my favorite character. I mean, Homura and Shiki are close, but something special about Jin to me. Anyway, chapter starts out as we left off. We had Draken Joe showing Lobelia just chained up and beaten to hell, just absolutely mauled, just blindfolded and ready to be tortured further. And obviously, Rebecca's not gonna want to partake in that kind of person. And I agree. I have seen. I don't know if I've seen anything since this chapter, but people not liking Lobelia and wanting bad things to come to her. Again, the complete pinnacle of her list of bad things caps out at high school tier bullying. Not even that. Like, some high school bullies are, way worse. And she, doesn't deserve this. Pranks at most, maybe some public kind of like low tier humiliation and dumping food on her, anything kind of like that. Not torture. Absolutely not physical torture. But now Draken Joe is like, all right, you can go do whatever you want with her, just don't kill her. Ends up uses alchemy ether gear, as we know, he can do turn water or the glass to water and then back into glass. Neat power, as we know. I'm curious to know how exactly Shiki and Ko are going to end up combating that, because it is obviously a really good ability. It's going to be intriguing just to see it kind of go down, see how exactly they're going to really just combat something that both packs and yet also just dangerous when you think of the sheer level of potential and just possibilities that he can drop on a person. Just lay out to anybody that ends up pissing him off. Now, from what's actually really interesting just looking at it, is his ether gear looks different than it was when it was first introduced. I'm wondering if it has to do with the way that it works. Like, maybe it has like different shapes to different forms. Like the one we see when he turns the glass into water is more of like a kind of like zigzag pattern, whereas where he first saw it had like the almost like, I want to say like zippers or buckles around the fingers, and then like this twisting motion around the hand. I don't know, maybe Mishima decided to change it, or maybe it just has different different shapes for functions. And we'll find out more about more about ether gear and the way that it kind of works, and maybe there'll be maybe Shiki will figure out like, oh, I can change my ether gear in order to do different gravity based. No, regardless of which, now he's like said like, oh, just don't kill her, because regardless of kind of like the quantity or the quality of a person, of whether they're good or bad or what it could be, I can find ways to make money off them. And Rebecca, I mean, the first thing she wants to do is let him out, and that's when we're introduced to the fourth member of Draken Joe's Element 4, this being this dude Daichi, who is the Earth one. The one that looks drastically different, the one that's clearly not human. Like, he's got like these weird black like X's for eyes, like, he's got like a rocky body and some very strange, like, I want to say like a thing of celery for a head. He's just a big weird looking alien, and he's offering Rebecca chocolate. And what's funny is, like, when I first saw him come out of the ground, I thought of, Monsieur Soul, however pronounce it. It's just Soul. Monsieur, French name, hard to pronounce for me. But it has the Element 4, and you can compare the Element 4 of Fairy Tail to Eden Zero, though I haven't really seen much for similarities between each side. The only thing I could thought of this one was obviously like melding with the ground, but that just seems hard of powers in general elements, as it would be. And this guy seems very friendly. Monster Soul was kind of a Monsieur, a French guy, Soul Man, really weird. Got beat up by Elfman. It's hard to pronounce, but he was kind of a dick. This guy, even though I figured he'd be like the creepiest one, just from going off of spooky appearance, but I don't know, maybe with the chocolate offering, nice. I'm not too sure, but we'll hopefully find out more in that aspect maybe next chapter. But for me, the main meat of what's going on is going on with Jin and Shiki. I just want to see more of it. Jin's coming up. He's using his wind, just making like huge gusts. Pino is like talking about how like the wind is going like what 50 meters a second, or 30 miles per hour. For wind, that's fast. I was thinking more of like character speeds. We already know like they can dodge bullets and whatnot and reactive bullets, so they're obviously above supersonic ranges. But imagine like with wind going in all direction, it's not going to be the exact same thing as throwing something. It's kind of like I guess the I think of like the difference between Shiki dropping like an AOE versus like with a gravity ball. It's going to be a lot different. The AOE, even if it's slower than the character, still AOE's going to hit a much larger compass by set ability. Regardless of which, Shiki just seems to be really getting pushed hard here. And I really like looking at Jin and just the way that he's having like this mass AOE win. You have his, what Pino says, the ether lines, which, cool. I'm just going to refer to them that. I'm calling them ether gear marks, whatnot. But they're just swirling around to kind of like meld in with like the design of his attacks. Shiki's trying to figure out what he can do in this. He's gravity abilities to, just snatch like a piece of concrete that's nearby, which again looks really cool. Just the way that it's presented, almost like just using gravity, almost like a little tendril, kind of an elongated limb, snatch it and throw, which is a basic ability that of gravity manipulation that is very believable to him, just kind of improvising. But at that point, here comes Jin jumping out of the way, Shiki planning for that, jumping way up on the ceiling and preparing an attack on top of it. But that's not going to be enough for Jin. Jin then uses one of his attacks and just pushes Shiki, but it's like a palm thrust, but that palm thrust shoots him through multiple like big metal and concrete pillars, crashing him. And he's talking about like how he's not even close to where he was at before. And we know, like he said, 320% increase. I think that Shiki's gonna have to go all out in order to defeat him. I think we're gonna have to see that full body ether gear, his hair changed, turned green and whatnot, in order to beat Jin, just because to me, that's the only thing I can really see. We know that Shiki is capable of that. The only time he's done that so far was against the parasite pretending to be Elsie, as well as the Kurenai robot. And him going into that, I would actually like to see him go into that form, and then the attack not take out Jin, but it's more of like, now they have to fight in their powered up form, or of Shiki being like, I have to sustain this in order to win. It's not just going to be, I take him out with that one move, I'm in this form, and then, I undo it. I think he's going to have to do it, fight to his full potential, full ability that he's got right now, and then, manage a win, and hopefully find out about Jin's, reason to be doing this, and why he wants to, because we know he wants to help his sister in some way. We don't know entirely, what his reasons are, why she's with Drac and Joe, why he, because we already saw he was with who he thought was sister for healing properties, that he wanted to help his actual sister clean. So from that, we'll hopefully find out more of what drives him, his more character specific kind of traits and goals and whatnot. What exactly is his whole reason for all this, and maybe what will happen that will lead to him joining up with the Eden Zero team. Because like I said, I think that he's definitely going to be part of the crew. He fits that same kind of bill like Let and Godzilla had from Rave Master and Fairy Tail. And I've mentioned before, I will forever love the whole the first antagonist converted into an ally thing, because it's always one that the author planned, that they're super badass and it's just fun to have them on their side switch over. It doesn't have to be every character, but when you see that one, you're like, I think it's this guy, I hope it's this guy. And someone like Jin, for me, I hope it's this. I don't see it being Drac and Joe or Justice or anything. I see it being Jin, definitely Jin. And he's talking about how his wind obstructs all, and I think that's just kind of the force and the AoE, and it being more of a large-scale destructive kind of ability. Whereas his sister Clean, he's saying that her wind kind of steals all, which explains how she was able to kind of absorb and shrink down Happybot and Rebecca, and it seems to be more of this weird ether conversion of things that it touches, and then they kind of melt with the wind. And then she has a more sword all like absorbed into it and then shot back at her. Pretty much just I mean, really projectile. It's just like a ballista shooting back one of the. Are they still called arrows? I actually have no idea. I'm gonna have to look in. I'm very curious now because I never thought about it. But you know what I mean. If you ever seen a ballista, giant spear-like arrow shot out of a humongous bow. But that whole thing, being brought at her, and there was get some nice end up stealing her clothes, and she's pretty much just down to her boots and her underwear at this point. No, nothing to cover up her top, and that whole bit. I'm wondering how she's going to beat her. I'm hoping for what I would say is a nice kind of callback, but I like the idea more dragged out. Is thinking back to Urza versus Arya, as we know, back in the Phantom Lord arc. If you've read Fairy Tail, if you haven't, then I'll pretty much say this. So their element 4, they were all relatively pretty strong. They all got pretty good fights. The main one, who was the strongest one, he seemed like he was a bit full of himself when it came to going all out. And though they were, each of the element 4 were around kind of like level, like Natsu, Gray, Elfman, and whatnot, we already know Urza was a step above all of them, and when displayed, like, at a fair fight, she ran through Arya. It was a complete and total demolishing. Like, he did his whole, air, like, little airless vacuum attack to kind of, that was like, it just kind of, like, sucks out life and whatnot from things that it hits. And she just cut through it and then was just like, I know you only beat the Master Makarov because you got a surprise attack. You are nothing. You're crap. I'm hoping we get something kind of like that whole cutting through wind, but more of like an actual fight instead. Because with the one with Urza and Ari, it was understandable because Urza logically was a good step above where he was at. If Element 4 characters were around level, Gray, Natsu, Elfman, and whatnot, Urza, who we already knew, was much more powerful than they are. Obviously, being Arya made sense, like the way that she did. Whereas with Homura, she seems, I would say she's around Shiki's level, and we've seen with, like, Wise as well. Wise was barely able to skim past beating Laguna, and I would assume that they're all, again, still around the same level. The Eden's, I would say, like, maybe the equivalent for Urza for the Eden Zero crew would be like having battle-dressed Valkyrie or battle-dressed Witch if she's on the Eden Zero ship. Something like that, We know they're strong. We know that they have these battle-dressed buff suits and whatnot. But out of the main cast, Shiki, Wise, Homura, and to a degree Rebecca, all should be around relatively kind of like the same combat level. Rebecca a little bit less than the others because she's still pretty new, but her gear seems really good so far. So I'm hoping that we get, just a really nice, like, built-up fight. Because Homura is growing. And I think one of the gaps between, like, also comparing the fight where, where Urza was already really powerful at the start of the series. She didn't have her first kind of, like, what I would say a real struggle fight, and that she had to, overcome some hard walls and obstacles was against Ikaruga. Whereas with Homura is, she's supposed to be growing into this spot as Valkyrie, as, taking up the spot of her teacher and who she saw as her mother, which is really nice. I like that the kind of gaps between them. Urza, really running into the first big wall of the series versus Homura, who is trying to catch up and meet this position. So we're getting a pretty good fight there as well. It's going to be appreciated. I think anybody would love Homura. Ready, fun. She's a very interesting character, and well, I don't think we're gonna see. I was gonna say, like, maybe it would hint, build up this thing. I don't think we're gonna see something like a Valkyrie, buff suit like her battle dress yet. I believe her sword has 5 forms. Maybe we can get a new form, or I guess also what could be a new form is maybe just a further spread out ether gear, like her ether lines, because we've seen for the most part it's just one mark. Maybe it spreads out because we know when ether is stronger, it spreads further throughout the body until it becomes something like Jin or Shiki's, where it's physically going off the body and whatnot. So until that point, I'm hoping that we at least just get. I really just want to get a good fight between Shiki and Jin. That's my primary focus right now. That's my primary focus. I mean, we got Wise isn't gonna die. That one, I'm just like, it's like he's gonna live. We know that. If Mishima ever decided to kill off someone like that, it wouldn't be this early in the story. It would absolutely not be this. So I wouldn't say it's impossible for him to, kill off a main character. I mean, he's a big shonen kind of guy. He doesn't regularly kill off characters. It doesn't happen all the time. He likes to do implied deaths, but when a character, he's fully intented on a character dying, he leaves him off. And I don't see him killing off Wise this early. But with the other fights, like we don't know how Rebecca's gonna get out of the situation. Maybe she's gonna have more of a talk, kind of diffuse what's going on between her and Daichi, the awkwardness, but his kind of I would say slightly pressing attitude. Maybe just have a conversation, maybe find out some info. Maybe we'll get some kind of an info dump, find out more about Draken Joe and the Element 4. Homura's, I can see Homura's being more of a technique based fight and more of how she's able to get through the obstacle of Sylph. As with her, the way that she seems to fight, with a lot of characters like that, they're probably not used to taking damage. There's the very strange style of their abilities. So for her, I imagine with Homura, we'll probably just need to. The obstacle for Homura won't be I need to get enough hits to beat her apart. I think for her, the obstacle is, how do I find an opening to get to my opponent to take him down? Because I think if she gets, she's able to close that gap and able to figure out a way in order to land the hit, you can probably take her out of one shot. Again, I don't think Sylph is somebody who would logically have a durable body. And with Jin and Shiki, I think that one's just going to be an all-out, big, full effort in fight, and Shiki will have to both go into his full body ether, stay in it in order to defeat Jin. And then I'm hoping Jin and him team up after this fight and they go Draken Joe. Please, that. It would be so much cooler, especially when you already could, give him a boss reason. Analyzes something to help save both Rebecca and Clean from Draken Joe. Other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts are about this chapter. Tell me what you're excited to see come up. Like I said, I really want to see Jin because Shiki I enjoy. I really like Shiki. I think he's a fun character already. Generally, I really like Hiromishima's main characters, even ones from short stories and one-shots. But Jin so far is my favorite. And it wouldn't surprise me if Shiki ends up overtaking him because I'm sure he has lots of Wild Space series. But at the moment, it's Jin. And I think for Jin, it's a lot on design, the way that he presents himself, his backstory. Maybe they'll tie up after we the Battle of Draken Joe, because I still think the Battle of Draken Joe is going to be the first, what I would consider staple fight of the series. And what I mean is that it's for Haru, I think it was the fight with Shuda. With Natsu, it was the fight with Gajil. And for Shiki, regardless if he teams up with Jin or not, I think it's going to be the Draken Joe fight, which is the first big, I don't want to say flagship fight. I think staple fight is the one to really go with. For, just real quick, looking over at Black Clover, obviously a series I enjoyed. For them, I think it was the fight with Vito on the Water Temple. I think that was the first big staple fight of the series that really just was the flex time. Anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts are, and I really appreciate thumbs up the video, from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. And I appreciate everyone's already subscribed. I think you're listening.